This is David Glass, formerly of Christian Death, on the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studio is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on X at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Big Strix Vinyl Records and Sports Cards, located in Rock Island, Illinois. New, vintage, and previously owned. You can find it at Big Strix. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
David Glass, former drummer for Christian Death, pioneers of the Gothic rock and death rock genre. He is promoting the documentary Rozz Williams, Romeo's Distress. The documentary will be debuted April 18th at the United Theater in L.A., followed by a live reunion performance from former members of Christian Death.
Yeah, let's get to that interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. David, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Hey, David, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, nice to meet you, Jeff, and thank you, Eric, for having me.
Hey, we are so excited to have you. So let's get right into this. Later this April, the documentary premiere, Rozz Williams, Romeo Distress in L.A., will be released at the United Theater. Can you give our listeners an insight on what to expect from this new documentary?
Sure. Well, Nico B., who had worked with Rozz towards the end, and he was a good friend of his, really wanted to do something special to celebrate Rozz after his passing, and he's been working for quite a long time trying to put this documentary together. He sourced a lot of materials from so many places, a lot of images and sound and picture, and just did interviews with everybody that had worked with Rozz in some of the musical projects that he had done, as well as some of the label people. And it's just really an interesting look at an interesting person. I mean, Rozz was such a interesting guy and a great artist, a really true artist. And this film really kind of pokes into his life, kind of before, during, and after some of the things that everybody knows about. I mean, they get into his childhood, which is awesome. They talk about his time with Christian Death, which is amazing, and that's what everybody is drawn to, as well as some of the art and writing and other types of work that he did later in his career.
Very good. After the viewing of the remaining members of Christian Death will be performing, can you talk a little bit more about and let our listeners know about, what can they expect from a set list from you guys, and how much time will you guys be spending playing live? What is the lowdown of it all?
Well, the lowdown is when Nico called me to interview, we started talking. I'm like, I really want to play music again because I hadn't played in quite some time. And I'm like, what if I put a band together? We can, show the, screen the film, and then the band members can come out and do some of the songs from the first 3 albums. And, we thought that was a great idea. So we've been working on that for some time. And so we're going to have the world premiere Saturday the 18th of April at the United Theater. We're going to screen the film for the first time in front of an audience. And then afterwards, I've got some of the original and former members of Christian Death coming out, and we're going to play songs from Only Theater of Pain, Catastrophe Ballet, and Ashes, and just do a cool little set to kind of celebrate Rozz and celebrate the film, and get in front of some of the fans who are flying in and excited about the film, and give them something a little more. The feedback has been amazing. I mean, everyone's super excited to not only see the film, but the fact that we're all getting together, some of us for the first time together, to play some of the music that we haven't played in a long time.
Oh, so cool. Yeah. Jeff, go ahead.
Well, I guess talk more about, your relationship with Rozz. What an interesting character. Just, from an outside perspective looking in, not knowing much about him, it just seems like he was a pretty groundbreaking person.
Yeah, well, touring and doing albums and, living together for a short time. He and Eva lived with my wife and I in a house in San Francisco. And, I got to know him a little bit. There are others that are much closer to him, but my experience was that he was, super interesting guy, very shy to some until you knew him, and just always doing art, always changing. He didn't want to stand still. Whenever it got too comfortable, he was moving on to something else. So, as a person, he was just immersed in art, more so writing. He was a writer, of course, a poet, and doing a lot of different types of art, collage, different types of interesting artwork. He was all into that. And of course, music. Most people know him as a singer, but he was more than that. He was a true artist, and that's what he did. That's how he lived, just doing art.
Very good. Some of our listeners might not realize the impact Rozz Williams and Christian Death had on the Gothic rock community. Talk to us a little bit more about the writings and recordings and methodologies Rozz took with him into the studio to create some of these great songs.
Well, I mean, obviously, Only Theater of Pain is a seminal album. It's a must-have, and it's like the first death rock kind of foray from Southern California. And the fact that, I mean, they had a couple of guitar players, but once Rick Agnew came on with James and George and Rozz, they really did something special. I mean, Only Theater of Pain is an amazing album. And they did some amazing shows. And then at some point, Rozz decided, as he normally would, he wanted to do something different. And that's when he got together with Shaitan and Valor and myself, and we helped him reform Christian Death. And he changed his whole vocal style and delivery, and his writing changed. It wasn't Theater of Pain. It was something different, but it was also something special. And, he would go in with a notebook and he would have everything figured out and go in and do these amazing vocals with these amazing lyrics. And whether that was with Rick and James and George, or with Val Shaitan, myself, and, whoever we had on bass at the time, he was just, an amazing artist, both lyrically and vocally, and, the way he did shows and the way he presented himself. And that carried through to his albums. Each album's a little bit different. He changed quite a lot, not only in his sound, but his look and, his whole thing. He was always evolving.
As we speak of, getting into the studio and working with Rozz, back in the day when bands used to do it in a studio together, it's kind of a lost art today. Do you think in the modern technology of the now, Rozz would have still been able to kind of capture the electricity that you would have in a proper studio that bands just really don't utilize any longer?
I do think so. When I recorded, when we went to Rockfield in Wales to do Catastrophe Ballet, it was usually me and, the guitar and the bass. We'd lay down the basics. Rozz would be in doing a temp folk. And then afterwards he would go in and do his vocal, and he would do them very quickly. He had it together, and he can go in and really lay it down. I really like recording that way. It's a little bit different now. Some people still record that way. And in fact, we just went in and did a posthumous recording with Rozz Nico told me that prior to Rozz passing, he told him that he really wanted to go in and do a proper full band recording of the song Flowers that he wrote. He did a version of that with vocal and piano for an album. And then he did a different version of it live a few times, but he wanted to go in and do that. So, Nico gave us the vocal. I went in and I laid down the foundation of the song and some new drums with Rozz's vocal playing back in my ear. And then James laid down his bass. And then Rick went in with Paul Roessler, who has helped produce this thing. And he laid down the guitar. And it came out great. And that's to your point, we all did our pieces separately. And it still gelled. It still had a certain vibe and feel. And having Rozz to play off of really kind of pulled it all together. So in some cases, doing it all together in the studio is great. In other cases like this, where we did them separately, it still worked. It still sounds cool.
Oh, very good.
Well, so you were talking about doing a posthumous song. I know he's had some releases that have come out since his death. Or do you know the vault, the Rozz songs? Is there any stuff left over that might still see the light of day?
I don't know. I know that Nico has, he's working with the family, and he has some material, mostly live stuff. I don't know that there's a lot of unreleased studio recordings. And this was a one-off. Doing Flowers was something that Nico wanted us to do for the movie. It was something that he said Rozz really wanted to have happen. And so we were happy to kind of jump in and do it, and it's great in the movie. People will hear it when they see the movie. And then he's going to release it as a 12-inch, I think, in a couple months when the pressing is done. But I don't know that there's a whole vault of Rozz material. I think there are other songs that we could do that with, but I don't know that we ever would. We'll have to see how things go.
I can't wait to hear that one. It sounds exciting.
Yeah, it's a good take on the song, and I think people will enjoy it.
Well, let's talk about the live shows. Is there any vaulted live material that the band could release as a live album anytime down the line? Well,
I don't know that there may be some stuff. I think Nico has that. We're not actually a band. We don't even have a name. We're just doing this this gig as a celebration to Rozz and to the film, to support the film. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because it's like, film plus live performance. We don't even have a real name for the band. And we talked about a name and they're like, why? We're doing one show. And if we do more, great. But for now, it's just the one show. And it's really an interesting makeup of musicians. It's not just one set of 4 or 5 people. The first part of the set will be Only Theater Pain songs, and I'm going to do that with James and Rick, with Eva O on vocals. Jatan may also come in to do some vocals. So like the first half of the set will be that group. And then I'm going to, the second half of the set, Jatan and I will stay on. We'll play stuff from Catastrophe, Ballet, and Ashes. And we're going to bring in William Faith, who played bass with Rozz later, and he did some Christian Death stuff, and Kenton Holmes, who played guitar with Rozz and Jatan's. As well, we're going to have singer Patrick Mata from Community FK coming out as our special guest vocalist. And he's going to cover those songs. Jatan will sing her parts. It's going to be pretty amazing.
Oh, so exciting.
And also Paul Roessler from 45 Grave. He's going to be doing some keyboards, and he's going to do the song Lament with Jatan, and that should be pretty special.
Awesome.
Yeah. Before we started recording, we I had asked you about Pompeii 99, and I know that was with Jatan and Valor. Can you talk a little bit about your origins with getting together with those guys?
Sure. I mean, I don't know how much interest there is in Pompeii 99. It was an interesting little arty group, and we did some shows and had a record, and that's how we ran into Rozz at our record release party. And we'd also done some live performances where Christian Death was on the bill, and we were on the bill as well. That's how we kind of came in contact. How I got into Pompeii 99 was funny because they were rehearsing with an old high school buddy. They were in his guest house, and a buddy of mine from high school who's a drummer decided he didn't want to do it. He called me up and said, "Hey, David, Mark's got these guys and they're too weird for me. Why don't you do it?" So I ended up in Pompeii 99, and it was great. We spent a couple of years. We made an album and a single, and we did some great shows opening for like Public Image and New Order, and we did some great events, some shows where Christian Death was on the bill, and got to meet Rozz, and that's how we kind of got together. Rozz came to a record release party and basically said, "Listen, I want to do something different. I want to try something new," and somehow it was decided that we were going to do that with him.
Well, you joined Christian Death for the Catastrophe Ballet album. Did you find that album and Rozz Williams' style to be challenging for you to adapt to? With all of your drumming chops, was it a learning curve for you?
Well, at that point I was like 19, 20 years old. It's not like I had a lot of chops. I was just like playing music and doing my best. And, it was really interesting the way it came together. At first we had to play some of the songs off Only Theater of Pain because we didn't have anything else. And then, Rozz brought in some songs, and, Valor had some stuff, and somehow we pulled together some new music. And we were on the road. We went over to France. We had a deal with a French label. We did a French tour and went straight into the studio, into Rockfield, and recorded Catastrophe Ballet. So it all happened pretty quickly, and it all just kind of came together organically. And we were all just, they would bring us the songs, and it's like, okay, I'll play this. And that's how the album came together. And, it's a real good album. It's a solid record with some good songs and, great lyrics and great vocals. And it's just amazing the way he changed his vocal style. That was a bit of a surprise. I thought it was going to be more of what he did on Only Theater of Pain, but he came in with his more Bowie-esque crooner style vocals, which really changed the whole dynamic. Still had the intensity and the darkness, and still had the quality lyrics and everything, but it was a whole different delivery. And I think that was pretty cool. I think that was very gutsy of him. And I think somehow it gelled, and we made a pretty good record.
You made a hell of a record.
Yeah. Well, Ashes was another great album from 1985. Can you talk a little bit about comparing and contrasting those two albums?
Sure. Well, coming off the road, we went and recorded Catastrophe Ballet, and we were touring, and touring was hard. And of course you run out of money, and we were, kind of self-financed. And, so it was very difficult. So Rozz flew back to the States before we could afford to fly back. And when we got back there, we all regrouped, and we had some new stuff that we were working on and new songs. And we rehearsed only a couple of times. It actually was in the basement of a hotel restaurant where I went down there for like a night or two with a new bass player and Valor and myself, and we hammered out some songs. And before you know it, we were in the studio recording Ashes, which was on the shorter side as an album. Yeah. But I think it was a really tight record, and it was good. I think that, it's still different than Catastrophe Ballet, a bit of an evolution. In some ways, I think that was the point where maybe Rozz was deciding, okay, this is comfortable. I want to go and do something else. And so we made that record, and we were set to go on the road. And right before we flew to Italy to do a tour, Rozz decided he didn't want to do it. And that's where we kind of split off at that point. But Ashes was kind of, coming out of Catastrophe and Only Theater of Pain. It was, I think a good solid record. There's some great songs on it once again, and great performances. And a lot of people do like that record, and they like some of the songs on it. It had some weird stuff on it. Lament, When I Was Bed, not necessarily what you would think when you think Christian Death.
Well, you talk about how you were planning on going on tour, and Rozz ends up dropping off. Did you see it coming, or did it just kind of blindside the rest of the band?
Well, did I see it? I don't know if I really saw it coming. I was hoping that we'd just keep going. We had some momentum. We just did 2 good albums, and we were set to go back on the road in Europe. But everybody has their needs, and he needed to do something different, whether he felt that we were being complacent and going in the same direction, and he wanted to do something different. He always wanted to do Dacus Carota and other types of music as opposed to what we were doing. And originally we were going to change the name and just keep going as Sin and Sacrifice. But, between the promoters and labels and the fans, everybody just went with Christian Death, and we just kind of stuck with that for a while.
Well, back in the 80s, we saw, hold on, let me do this again. Clear my throat. Excuse me. Let's try that again. Back in the 80s, we saw bands of all genres, touring schedules to be over the top, excessive, in between recording new music. Can you talk a little bit more about the touring constraints that were put on Christian Death at the time in between making, new music?
Well, sure. I mean, I don't know if there's any constraints. We were all trying to just do music. And in between, some of us had to have like gigs at catering companies and whatever we were doing just to kind of make ends meet, especially when we were back in the States. In Europe, it was different. We had a little different living situation, and we could kind of get by. You do a new record, you get in advance, you live on that for a little bit, and then you got to get on the road because you're broke and you need to support the album and get to the next one. Touring is hard. Touring can be very expensive. It can take every ounce of strength and money that you have. And, it was very DIY. We had record labels that we were doing licensing deals with. We weren't traditionally signed to a label. So we would make a record, get an advance, that would move us to the tour. We'd do the tour and come off tour, and then we'd have to get back in the studio. And, it's not easy being a musician. It's a great job if you can afford it. But, it can be a tough life, especially when you're in a band. At that time, we were underground. Yeah. We weren't, independent alternative type music didn't, become commercial until a decade later.
Exactly.
Well, I guess take us back to that 1984, 1995 time and the tours. We kind of been alluding to that, but who were some of the other groups you were touring with?
We mainly did a lot of headlining tours. We did open for Susie and the Banshees in Bonn, Germany, and we did some gigs like that. And we got to play with other bands at the time. We did something with Psychic TV and Flesh for Lulu and bands like that. Fields of the Nephilim played with us, some really cool acts. And but a lot of it was just us doing headlining tours, smaller headline tours.
Yeah, very good. Well, I want to talk a little bit something different about your management. Yeah. Work as a manager. You've represented Switchblade Symphony, great band.
Oh yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about your involvement with the band and just a really eclectic, unique band?
Yeah, Tina and Susan were amazing, and George and Eric, all of them. They were so great. Well, a buddy of mine owns a rehearsal studio in San Francisco, and at the time he called me up, and I, at the time I was working in television. I had a regular job and a family and everything, and I had been playing a little bit of music. I was playing with Mephisto Waltz, flying out and doing shows, but really not doing anything major. I did some stuff in Shadow Project for a little bit, but I'd kind of transitioned into just working as a regular person, right? And my buddy, and I was still trying to stay in music. I was, doing shows with Mephisto here and there. We'd, do festivals and whatever. And my buddy from up north calls me and he said, "Hey, David, I got these two bands at the studio. One's a punk band. They're going to sign to this label in LA. They're doing a big show at the Palladium. And there's this other band, this goth band. They don't have a deal. And, do you want to help me manage these guys?" And I'm like, "Yeah, hey, let's do that. That could be cool." So I flew up there and I hung out. And I went to the show at the Palladium, and then I went back up to San Francisco, and I told my friend, I said, "You take the punk band. Let me take the goth band. Switchblade, I get that. I know what to do with them." I had been doing some work with Cleopatra Records, and I knew that would be a good home for them. And so, we started working together. I got them signed to Cleo, and, they went in and recorded Serpentine Gallery, which is an amazing record.
Yes.
And so Cleopatra, and the thing is, they were building. They had a couple songs on a compilation. They were doing some local shows and really building an audience and really building a buzz. And outside of San Francisco, they were building a buzz. So, the demand was there. Somebody just had to kind of release them, right? And so we got that album released, and we got them on the road doing headline tours and also opening up for some bigger acts, Front 242, Frontline Assembly, bands like that. And they just blew up. There was such a demand. They would do headline tours and just pack the place. And, they sold a bunch of records, sold a bunch of merch, did a bunch of shows. And then we did the second album at Brilliant Studios in San Francisco. And that one did really well, and they kept touring, and things were getting bigger. And then we hit the third album, and we recorded that at Daniel Lanois' studio, Teatro, in Oxnard. And that was a great album as well. And they were out doing bigger shows and more touring. They went to England. They went over to Japan for a show, and, it was growing. But at the same time, it's hard to make a living. And, Susan and Tina had been together for so very long, and they were getting older. And, bands change, and they decide not to do things anymore. And so they decided to stop at that point because, no one's making a real living at it. They were doing okay, but, things change, and so they broke up. But, when they were going strong, and people really loved that band because there's more trip hop with a kind of dark edge. And going into the 90s, the more electronic kind of dark wave and goth and stuff like that was becoming more prevalent. The old school death rock, style wasn't quite as popular at the time.
They were such a unique sounding band too.
Yeah, I mean, their sound was unique. The songs were unique. The look was great. I mean, it was just the perfect storm. I mean, as a manager, it's great when people actually are calling you. They want the band,
Exactly.
Instead of you having to hustle and say, hey, can you just put them on and give them the openings? They really did some great work, and they were, people really enjoyed the albums, especially Serpentine Gallery. That's kind of a classic, electro goth kind of record.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, cool. I want to take it back to Mephisto Waltz. You had joined up with some of the guys from your time with Christian Death. Can you talk a little bit more about your journey with that band?
Sure. I played with Johann and Barry and a certain iteration of Christian Death. We did Atrocities and some other smaller singles and stuff like that. We did some touring. And so I was back in LA, like I said, working a regular job, and I ran into Barry and Johann, and they're like, hey, we're doing show. We want to, do some more. So we're excited. I kind of went in the studio with them, and I was playing the Simmons kit that Barry had, and he just kept tracking songs. I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Turns out to be 2 or 3 records, And then in between, we did shows in, LA and San Francisco, but we also flew out and did festivals. We did Chicago, a festival in Chicago. We went and did something in, Spain, in Belgium, in Leipzig. We would just fly out and do like kind of weekend festival stuff. We went to Mexico City. We did some really cool shows, and, we made those records pretty quickly. And it was actually great because I like Johann and Barry and Chris. They're all really cool, and that was a really good time. And it was good for me because I could stay involved in music kind of on a part-time basis. Between that and managing Switchblade, I could still work a regular job and support the family.
Oh, very cool. Got one last question for you, then we'll leave you alone for the evening. So, the mystery of rock and roll is no longer a thing with all the social medias and all the different internet websites and what have you. And I praise bands that still try to keep that mystery together. Like, Depeche Mode just released that live concert documentary called Memento Mori. They're still trying to keep that mystery together. But, with, record sales not being what they are, and artists have to rely on social media to promote themselves, will we ever see again a mystery in the music business ever again?
It's hard to say. I'd like to say yes. It'll just be a different type of mystery than what we know now. I mean, the times of, seeing bands for the first time, or going out to a record release at midnight at Tower Records to get the new record from whomever's releasing. Those days might be gone. Vinyls make a little bit of a comeback, but it's just not like it was. And the word of mouth is really what drove that. Real fan bases and word of mouth. Yeah, fanzines. If you remember fanzines, you know, that it took longer, I think, to develop, and I think that created a certain urgency to want to know about a band or see a band or follow them, because it wasn't in your face 24/7. They didn't feel the need. They didn't feel compelled to always be posting something new to keep the viewership up. I think that's the difference. Is it was that percolating time that you don't have so much now. You'd make a record and you do a tour, and then you go away for a little while. You might play a city once a year, maybe every 6 months, but that would be it. And I think there's still some mystery. There's some bands that they don't do a lot of road work. They can't get over from Europe or whatever. And I think that the fans still appreciate, whenever something does pop up, they grab on. But the mystery, I don't know. Everything is so very quick now. And it's like you said, it's just in your face all the time. And you're really kind of pushed to do it. Hey, why don't you have Facebook? Why aren't you on Instagram? Right. And that's, and I'm not on Facebook, or I don't do Instagram or anything like that. And this is, doing these interviews is weird for me because I don't ever do this kind of stuff. I've been kind of away out of the loop for a couple, 3 decades, right? Yeah. Still active behind the scenes. I worked at Cleopatra Records for a while, and I worked with bands like Switchblade, and I was pretty active into the 90s and into 2000. But that's where I kind of fell off. That's why this show coming up is so important. I said, I just wanted to do one more cool show. And I was going to put together like a tribute band just so I could play the songs and have some fun. And this opportunity came up. So, that's why I'm excited about it. I know some of the other members that are playing, the other performers, where they hadn't been so excited before, everybody is now. Everybody's so into this. I've been rehearsing with James and Vincent, who's playing guitar with us, and Eva and William and Kenton, and everybody's just super excited. Rick and Chetan are going to be joining us in the rehearsal soon. I got the basics all put together, and Patrick's going to fly in, and everybody's just super excited to work together and to do this show and to support the film, and really just kind of like, who knows if this is going to be the last time that we all play together. It could be the last time it could be the last time I ever play drums. I don't know. So there's a real sense of excitement to want to do this and want to do a good job and want to do a great show for the audience who are, paying a lot of money to be at this show. And some of them are flying in from the UK and France and Mexico and everywhere. So it's a big deal for us, and everybody's honored to do it. And, at a point in our lives where it just feels right to do this.
Well, it's kind of amazing when you think about it, is that creating something, vintage and making it new again. People hold on to that nostalgia, and hopefully it burns a fire for some of you guys to play some more shows together in the future.
Yeah.
Well, who knows what the future holds right now. We just want to do a great show. And it is weird that we're combining the two facets of Christian Death. There was always the Only Theater Pain side, and then there was the later side of Christian Death, and we're kind of taking some of each of that, at least the 3 albums that we did with Rozz, and kind of melding it together in a show. So the first half of the show is Theater of Pain, and the second half is Catastrophe and Ashes. And there's 10 of us, between the two versions. I call it 1.0 and 2.0. And it's just, and what I'm hearing from people is they're super excited to want to see us perform, because some of them will see us for the first time, and they're excited that we're going to be performing these songs from these records because, I know Ballard does Christian Death, and he's got a lot of albums since that time. So this will be the first time that a lot of these people will see those songs being performed by some of us that played on those records.
Well, we're extremely excited for you and all the members of the band. We're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that you would like to cover that we forgot to plug or promote?
No, I think that's it. Saturday the 18th at the United Theater. Come on down. I think there's a few tickets left. And Watch for Flowers release. That's a really cool song, so I'm hoping people get into that. And I just hope people can come out and have a really great time.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, this is how things are going to work out. We're going to have this interview expedited for this weekend. We'll send it to you. We'll send it to your press or your publicist. And then I know you don't do social media. I was going to say share it wherever you can, but I know you don't. But we'll share it to all of our social medias. And
yeah, and well, I'll get, Nico is on the chain with Dan, our publicist, and he's got a big social, media presence. So he'll blast it out for people, I think.
Okay, well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, Eric, Jeff, thanks, guys. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, we appreciate the interview opportunity, and we'll
wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have this out for you this weekend. Sound good?
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Come true, but you just can't